Okay, algebra, we're going into section 6 of chapter 9, and we're going to factor. Today we're going to continue with expressions. You probably are seeing the pattern. We start with expressions and then we go to equations. But we'll start with expressions today, and notice that the one difference is a. We're not just going to have 1x squared. We're going to have some coefficient a, which makes the factoring a little more challenging. When we multiply, we've got to consider the factors of a now. Okay, so we'll try it with different combinations of positives and negatives. What if we have a negative b and a positive c, like is the case here? So we'll use what you've learned, but now we have to consider a little more complicated issue with a. Okay, so one possible way to set this up is to make a big set of tables. Ultimately, you're going to probably just go from the trinomial to two sets of parentheses, which is what we did the last couple days. But in order to kind of analyze what we're really doing, we could make lists as we did at the beginning of our other factoring in section 5. So we're going to consider the factors of a, the factors of c, and how they possibly come together to create the middle term. The middle term is a combination of the outside, inside when we FOIL, right? Okay. So the factors of a in this example are really pretty straightforward, because what kind of a number is 2? Prime number. So what are our factors? 2 times 1, right? Or you could set it up as 1 times 2. Okay. The factors of c is not prime. We have more options, right? But notice the middle. What will the signs be for the factors of c? They'll both be negative, right? Because the middle is a negative term and that c is a positive. So both of these factors will be negative when we multiply. So what are the first things that come to mind, first factors, Matthew?
6 and 1.
So 6 times 1. Of course, these can be we could switch it the other way in 1 times 6, right? Negative 1 times 6. The other two factors, everyone? Mm-hmm. Negative 3 times negative 2. Of course, those can be switched the other way too. Negative 2 times negative 3. Okay, so the middle term, the goal is negative 13x. And so let's put the possible factorization here. And so sometimes you'll find you have to erase, so you have to cross it out and try a different factorization. Okay, but at least the first term is prime. So we'll have 2x times 1x. We could just leave those there and deal with the rest. Both of the second factors are negative, so that means our signs are both negative. And now we need to put either 6 and 1 or 3 and 2, right? Which one do you want to try?
6 and 1.
6 and 1? So we have a choice. We could put 6 here and 1 here, right? Or, whoops, I went too far. We could put 1 here and 6 here, right? So I see a thumbs up already from somebody. Which way do you want to do it? We're going to do it the first way first. Just because Cameron wants to do it the other way. Okay, so when we do it this way, what does our outside, inside give us? What is 2x times negative 1? And negative 6 times 1? So negative 2 and negative 6 give us negative 8. Is that the middle term we want? No. So let's try Cameron's way. 2x minus 1 and 1x minus 6. So we just switched the factors of 6 and 1. And let's look at the outside, inside. What do we have now, Cameron?
Negative 13x.
Negative 12 and negative 1 is negative 13, yay. We have the factors we need. So there's your solution. Or, I'm sorry, there's your answer to factoring. But not really solutions. We haven't solved anything. Okay, so 2x minus 1 and 1x minus 6. Okay, I'm going to give you this hint now, but I know it's early. This is the first time you've seen factoring with an a. But when you look at this middle term, negative 13, it's kind of big compared to 6 and 2, right? So because it's kind of big compared to 6 and 2, I immediately saw, because I have more experience than you, that I would want to do probably 6 times 2 when I'm looking at these factors, because 6 times 2 is what? 12. It's getting close to 13, okay? Rather than 3 times 2. We didn't even use 3 times 2 at all, because you all wanted to try 6 and 1. If we try 3 and 2, we don't get the middle term that we need. We end up with something smaller. So if this term here had been something smaller, I would have wanted to use 3 times 2, bringing me more toward a smaller number, okay? Let's try it with a positive b, but the c is now negative. Okay, so notice that this time the a is a composite number. What are the possible factors for a, Oscar?
4 and 1.
4.
2 and 2.
Good. 4 times 1, or you could write it as 1 times 4, and 2 times 2 is just 2 times 2. But lucky us, the c term is what kind of number? Prime. So we only have one possible set of factors, which are 1 times 3. However, it could be written as 3 times 1. And what else is the case for this number? It's negative. So one of these has to be negative, right? And these could be switched. Okay? So let's try a possible factorization. We're going for a middle term of 11, which again to me is kind of big compared to 4 and 3. So what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with 2 times 2 or 4 times 1?
2 times 2.
Who says 2 times 2? Who says 4 times 1? Most people think 4 times 1. Good for you, because that 13 is, or that 11 is kind of big. I mean, you could try the 2 times 2. Maybe we're wrong. 4n, 4n. And then we know that the signs are what? Negative and a positive. So where do you want it? Does anybody have a preference? Tom wants to put the negative in the first one. Okay. Why did you want to do that? Because 4 is going to be multiplied to something here, and you want a bigger number in the middle. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. Because ultimately the outside, inside, we want to be 11. So what might you do with these factors? Should we just go with the first one that you see here? We have negative 1 and positive 3. What do you get when you do the outside, inside?
11.
You get 11. You get what you wanted, don't you? You get 12 and negative 1 with your outside, inside, which is 11. 4n squared plus 12 minus 1 is 12n and minus 3. So we do get what we need. And there are your factors. Okay? Again, you always have the option of fact foiling to make sure that you get back to the original trinomial. There's a really big learning curve the first day you do this. Just like we saw the first day you factored without an a greater than 1, you know. And so with practice, you really start to see the factors more quickly. So at first it's slow, and then you pick up speed. Okay, so pause the video and come back and see how this worked. I mean, ultimately, most people do not want to continue to use the table. The table is handy when you have some extremely difficult one, right? Where you're considering all factors, but in this case, we could just put 2 sets of parentheses. The good news here is we have a prime number in the a position. So what will the first in each of these binomials look like? 3t times what? Good, times 1t. I'm going to put the 1 there to help us remember that it's there as we're looking at the outside inside. And then 4 is a combination, you know, it's a composite number, so we have 2 times 2 or 4 times 1. Anybody have a thought on that? I mean, if you do 2 times 2, because if you do 4 in this position, you got 12 in your outside, which is too big, right? So I'm hearing, what will the signs be? Both positive. And if you plug in 2 times 2, the outside is 12, the inside is 2. 12 plus 2 is? Ooh, I'm sorry.
6,
I got extremely too big. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 plus 2 is... Okay, so we have 8. 3 times 2 is 6t. 2 times 1 is 2t, so there's your 8t in the middle. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, we got the factors. Let's try it again. This time we have a positive c, but the middle is negative. So what does that mean for the signs? Both are negative. Okay, and so the interesting thing is, which number is prime, A or C? So we could go fill that in first. And now we know these first terms both have S. The question is, do we use 4 and 1, or do we use 2 and 2? You think 4 and 1?
Yes.
Where would you put the 4? Would you put it here?
Yes.
4 and 1. When you do that, you get what here? Negative 20 and negative 1. Negative 21s. Is that what we have in the middle? No. So let's try it again. Let's just do it this way. What can we do instead? You want to switch them? Okay, so I hear 1s and 4s. So when we do this, I have 1s times 5 is what? Negative 5. And negative 4. There it is, negative 9. So there is the factorization that we need, not this one. Okay, this one has a negative c, but a positive b. As I look at this, the middle number is kind of big compared to 2 and 7. And what do we know about 2 times 7? 14, which is really close to 13, right? So in this particular one, we have prime numbers in A and C, so that's great. So we have 2H and a 1H. We have a negative 7, though, a negative C. So what does that mean for our signs? One's positive, one's negative. And I don't know if I've set this up right. Maybe it would be negative on the left and positive on the right, but I'm going to start with something. And what might we do next? Tom? We probably want the 2 to multiply to 7, right? To get toward 14. And then we would have 1. But now what do we get when we do the outside-inside here? Outside-inside gives us what? Negative what?
14.
No, because the inside gives you a positive 1. So negative 14 plus 1 is negative 13. Wrong sign. So all you have to do is
Switch the signs.
switch. Boom. And now we have the right factors. So sometimes that's all you need to do is erase or just switch like I did the signs. Okay, questions? This actually came up in your assignment last night with one, and they gave you a hint on what to do. It was in number 64 last night about the set of keys. So what was the hint they gave you when your first term is negative? And we have till 9:15 together, so. What are you supposed to do? Or what did they suggest you do? Okay, good. It says that you may need to factor out a negative 1. So there are moments in your assignment where they're teaching you things. And so you are discovering as you go, which is a great way to learn. But if you haven't tried the problem, you're not going to benefit from that. Anyway, factoring out a negative is what the assignment asked you to do, and that's what we're going to use today. I mean, if we have a negative 3, that really complicates things. The first term, the leading coefficient, we would rather it be positive. So if we factor out a negative 1 here, what do we have left? What does the trinomial now look like? The opposites, right? So negative 1 times, what's next? 3x squared. Plus 13x plus 4. There it is. So you've got to keep the negative 1 with you, but take it out. And now look at, we are left with a trinomial that's really nice and positive. Okay? So we say negative 1, and what are the binomial factors? that can take us back to that trinomial.